I've had a lot of questions lately about what sandbag exercises are best for each individual muscle. What should I do to grow my back? What are the best sandbag legs exercises? Stuff like that. I'm making this video as an answer, but first I want to say, while looking at sandbag lifting through the eyes of a bodybuilder is very productive at the start, if your goal is muscle, of course you'd want to know which muscles get worked with different exercises. In my opinion, once you have a basic understanding of what sandbags do, you'll be much better off just not thinking about muscle, and instead focusing your attention on performance, on getting better, and letting the muscle take care of itself. If you can get yourself to trust the process, to accept on a deeper level that getting stronger with the basic sandbag exercises is enough to build a lot of muscle, to embrace the truth that worrying about whether or not you're growing is counterproductive and will only hold you back, I believe you will experience the best gains of your life. That's how it worked for me, at least. That out of the way, getting to actual muscle, what can you expect from sandbags? Well, to start, I should make it clear how I choose to approach sandbag lifting as a whole. You can do pretty much anything with a sandbag, isolate each individual muscle and all that, using light sandbags for curls and extensions even, but in my opinion, that's not the best way to go. For best results, I believe it's better to focus on what sandbags do best, to focus on the core, heavy, easily scalable sandbag movements, those movements that involve the most amount of muscle at once. I'll cover them later. For example, I do not believe it's productive to approach sandbags in the same way you would a typical gym machine. With a machine, you might work with different angles, purposely putting yourself into disadvantageous positions as a way to bias one part of a muscle over another, trying to get the stretch or whatever else. That's great, but I do not recommend attempting to manipulate sandbags in that way. Instead, focus on improving your strength with the basic movements, let sandbags do what they do best, and for those parts of the body that the sandbag basics don't build very well, use other things like a barbell or calisthenics to fill in the gaps. I believe that's the best way to optimize growth. When used in this way, basic sandbag movements done with heavy weights, you can think of each muscle in the body as falling into one of three categories: maximum gains guaranteed, most of the way there, and minimal muscle growth. Starting with the first category, maximum gains guaranteed, with heavy sandbags, you can rest assured knowing everything on the backside of the body, from the hamstrings to the upper traps, will grow to an elite level, rivaling and often surpassing what you might get training in the typical way like a typical bodybuilder. Heavy sandbags focused on the basics will give you those thick, meaty hamstrings, a huge butt, spinal erectors from the waist to the neck so dense you'll see them through a shirt. The same is true for the upper back and lats and traps too. Assuming you keep getting stronger with sandbags that are actually heavy enough to give you a real challenge, you should see some very noticeable gains once you start working with them. Moving to the second category, most of the way there, these are muscles that will grow a lot from lifting sandbags, but probably won't reach maximum development without some extra work with other training tools. Starting with the quads, they will definitely grow, and unless you're after Tom Platz-like legs, you should be happy with the development you'll get. Sandbags are likely to give you that big but also athletic look. If you want truly massive tree trunk legs though, you might consider adding some quad isolation in addition to the sandbag lifting. The core and abs will thicken considerably. Sandbags will take you maybe 75% of the way to maximum development. Just bracing while holding a sandbag in position is a real challenge. Add some movement and you'll see what I mean. If you really want a quality six-pack though, some direct isolation work is recommended. I've had great success pairing heavy sandbags with the ab wheel and other high-rep bodyweight basics like sit-ups and leg lifts. Going weighted works well too. The biceps and forearms will grow a surprising amount. This caught me off guard when I first got into this stuff. I did not expect to see such fast progress. Many people seem to think the biceps and forearms are show muscles, but that couldn't be further from the truth. They're often the determining factor in whether or not you successfully lift a sandbag, and they're constantly pushed to their limit during every set. Here again though, if you want huge bodybuilder level forearms and biceps, I do recommend adding some direct isolation work. There's a lot of information out there on the best exercises for the arms. Personally, I don't think it really matters. If you want to maximize development, pick a basic curl of some kind, and at the very least, a basic wrist curl and extension. Extra points if you train all 6 of the forearm movements, get stronger over time, and you will grow. Before getting to the final category, minimal muscle growth, we should cover pressing. You can press sandbags overhead, and you can use them for floor presses or bench press, and if you want to go that route, you definitely should. If pressing sandbags calls out to you and you enjoy doing it, it's a great way to build the pressing muscles to a very high level. In my opinion though, and remember, this is just my opinion, I don't have all the answers, when muscle is the goal, I believe it's much easier and efficient to work pressing with other things. I like calisthenics, barbells or machines work great too. Well, you might ask, if easy and efficient is what we're after, why not just use machines for everything then? This is for one simple reason. For the muscles listed in the first category, the posterior chain, I truly believe you will see superior size gains with sandbags when compared with anything else. Sandbags give you something special that I do not believe can be replicated in any other way, especially for the back. They seem to tie everything together, giving you a back that ends up looking like one giant mass of mass, and I mean that in a good way. The definition will still be there, it's just like all those in-between spaces seem to grow alongside everything else, if that makes sense. But for the pressing muscles, I do not think sandbags will give you superior muscle size. You can certainly get to the same place you could with other things, but there's also fatigue, both physical and mental, to consider. Sandbag lifting is hard. If your only goal is muscle, then I figure why not do your pressing in a more convenient way with calisthenics or barbells, machines, kettlebells, whatever you like, and save that mental drive for the sandbag stuff where it really counts. Let me say again, this is talking strictly muscle. Pressing a sandbag overhead is badass and will give you a unique strength beyond what you'll get pressing made-to-lift objects. It also just looks really cool, and you feel cool when doing it. Getting hooked on pressing sandbags is likely to push you to train harder just because it's awesome, which has the potential to lead to more muscle down the line. But all of this to say, for someone who doesn't care about mastering the skill of pressing heavy sandbags, I do not believe it's necessary. If you include sandbag pressing exercises in your program, I would place the pressing muscles, the chest, shoulders, and triceps, in the second category, most of the way there. Adding some direct isolation work for at least the shoulders and triceps would be a good idea too. If you're like me though, and you choose to get your pressing work elsewhere, then for the final category, minimal muscle growth, we have the chest, shoulders, triceps, and calves. You might see some size gains in the chest from squeezing a sandbag, but let's not kid ourselves, that's not going to give you an Arnold-like chest. If you want that, hit your basic horizontal pressing exercises, bench press, dips, basic push-ups, whichever you prefer. If you want huge shoulders, get your vertical pressing in. Barbell overhead press or bodyweight variations like pike push-ups or wall-assisted handstand push-ups are effective. I would recommend a bit of isolation work here too. Face pulls or pull-aparts and/or side lateral raises are all great options. For the triceps, doing some kind of heavier compound movement like a close grip bench or diamond push-ups, in addition to an extension and a push-down, should serve you well. Sandbags will grow your calves a bit, just from all the time spent walking with weight, but for maximum development, you'll probably need to isolate them. Muscle out of the way, how about specific exercises for building that muscle? Let me quickly say, this is not a definitive list. There are so many sandbag exercises you can do, and what I'm recommending here is what you might consider the most bang for your buck movements. If someone wants the quickest way to get everything sandbags have to offer in terms of muscle, this is it. The exercises here have everything needed for long-term muscle growth. There isn't much skill involved, and you can grind through reps without needing to worry much about technique, letting you push the intensity. They work a lot of muscle at once, they have nearly infinite loading potential, and they let you accumulate a lot of high-quality volume without running you into the ground. I don't want to discourage anyone from experimenting, because training should always be fun, and there are gains to be made everywhere, but I believe if muscle is the goal, there are only 3 sandbag exercises you need. Everything beyond them is secondary. Those exercises are the row, the carry, and the box squat. I would add the basic lift from the lap to the chest too, but the box squat does what the lift from the lap does and then some, so adding it would be redundant. The row, the carry, and the box squat. These exercises do it all. Each one hits everything from those first 2 muscle categories extremely well. Rows specialize in the hamstrings and lower back. The carry will blow up the upper back, traps, lats, and biceps. The box squat works the glutes and upper back better than anything else I've ever tried. The quads too. They all work the core and the arms. If you were to focus entirely on these 3 moves and force yourself to get stronger with them over time, you would get pretty much everything sandbags have to offer in terms of muscle. Pair these 3 with some calisthenics or barbells and some isolation work for specific areas, and you'll be on your way to getting massive. Aside from a few nuances, that's actually exactly how I set up my new program, Sandbag Intensity. If you're interested, I recently made a 40-minute video on it, giving you the entire program, as well as covering exercise technique. I'll have that linked at the end of this video and in the description if you want to watch it. What about other exercises? Surely there's more you can do than just 3 moves. Yes, but I believe when strictly muscle is the goal, they're all secondary. To start, what about lifting a sandbag from the ground? That's a great exercise, but it's already built into doing pretty much anything with a sandbag. If you want to carry a sandbag, you first need to lift it, which is why I don't feel it's necessary to think of it as an individual exercise. Get your volume for that move indirectly on the way to doing other things. In isolation, I'd argue the lift from the ground doesn't give you anything a row won't anyway, and the fatigue you get from it is much higher than what you get with a row. How about basic squats versus box squats? This comes down to a few things. Regular sandbag squats are great, and I do still recommend them, but I've come to the conclusion the exercise is less about the legs and back and more about the core, grip, and balance. With a box squat, I can easily take my legs and back to failure. The bottom position lets you reset, and there isn't much of a balance component. With a freestanding squat, you'll almost always be limited on what you can do. The sandbag pulls you forward, and the move becomes more about the core and not falling over than anything else. At least that's how I feel about it after focusing on box squats for so long. I know some might disagree, and that's completely fine. That doesn't mean it's a bad exercise, quite the opposite really. While I don't consider it in the same league as the box squat in terms of direct, straight-up muscle, when looking at the long-term big picture, the strength gains you get from a standard sandbag squat will carry over to the 3 core sandbag moves, which will eventually allow you to push them further, meaning more muscle long-term. In that way, it's a great accessory exercise. This applies to most heavy sandbag exercises. I'm not recommending you don't do them. There are gains to be made from working with a variety of different movements, and even if the main benefit they offer is something like core strength or grip strength rather than a lot of muscle everywhere, those are useful, transferable things to have. I'm just sharing my experience with what's worked best for me for straight-to-the-point muscle growth over the largest area. On the topic of the legs, what about lunges or other single-leg exercises? Here again, I have not had success actually pushing my legs further with these compared with basic box squats and rows. If you hold a sandbag in a bear hug position, it's likely your arms will wear out before you reach failure in your legs. With the box squat, this isn't an issue because you get the chance to reset at the bottom of the movement. With a sandbag on the shoulder, it's likely the core will be the first thing to give. There's also balance to consider. That could be trained, but it's just another hurdle in the way. Again, worth doing if you want complete, maximum, well-rounded strength everywhere. Unilateral movements can be very important if you're after general athleticism, but for muscle, I'd just focus on the box squat. It's efficient, makes it easy to push your limits, and it's highly scalable. How about high pulls and other power-based lifts from the lap? Great exercises, capable of building a lot of muscle and of making you much more powerful too, of course, but comparing these things with a basic lift from the lap to the chest, or in this case, the box squat because it combines a squat and the lift from the lap together, I do not believe the power exercises will build more muscle than the basic lift. As much muscle? I think so, but at a cost. You can't push power stuff nearly as far, assuming you train in a way that allows for max power on every rep, meaning low reps per set and lots of rest. And it takes a lot out of you. If you want power, and I think you should because it's awesome, then by all means do some explosive lifting from the lap. But for raw, straight-to-the-point muscle gains, the core 3 moves get the job done in the most efficient manner. Okay, how about the big one, the sandbag to shoulder? Here we reach a bit of a crossroads. I love the sandbag to shoulder. It's fun, and for the right person, it's likely to lead to the most amount of muscle possible simply because it makes you want to train. It guides everything and gives your training purpose, which is likely to keep you pushing yourself in the gym, which is what's needed for gains. When talking strictly muscle though, when looked at as just another exercise rather than as the exciting sport it is, I do not believe it gives you anything you won't get from the main 3. Aside from perhaps some extra core gains from working with a sandbag in an off-center position. I chose the other exercises over the sandbag to shoulder for 2 main reasons. 1, the sandbag to shoulder has a huge skill component, and it takes some work to get good at it. And 2, you can't accumulate nearly as much volume when using actually heavy weights. Sure, you can do a bunch of reps with a lightweight, and that's awesome, but if muscle is the goal, you just can't beat the simplicity and spammability of rows, carries, and box squats. They let you get a lot of high-quality volume with heavy weights, and they make it very easy to push yourself further every workout, exactly what's needed needed for gains. Again, we can't ignore the big picture. If you really enjoy the sandbag to shoulder, if it gets you pumped up to go train because it's so fun, I believe it is likely to cause more long-term muscle gain, because with the sandbag to shoulder guiding a program, you'll likely try even harder to push those 3 core exercises to the limit, because you'll know doing so will directly improve your sandbag to shoulder strength. Having a goal like that can make all the difference. If you don't care about the sandbag to shoulder though, and all you want is muscle, just know you can skip it and you won't be missing out. I hope this helps. For any of the "what's your favorite sandbag exercise for building this or that muscle" questions, my answer is the row, the carry, and the box squat. These things represent the most straightforward path to sandbag muscle, and when paired with another training style like calisthenics or barbells, they will have you covered. Sandbag training doesn't need to be complicated, and I like that about it. I know it can be hard to accept that 3 movements would be enough to maximize development when we live in a world where we're constantly bombarded by pointless videos about the 10 best ever quad exercises and whatever else, but the basics are enough, provided you put in the work. Focus on those 3, sprinkle in some other stuff based on your weak points or on what you find enjoyable. That part is important. Get stronger over time, and you will grow. If you want to know more about sandbags, consider checking out my books, Sandbag Hypertrophy and Sandbag Intensity. There is so much more to lifting sandbags than just 3 exercises if you're after more than strictly muscle, and the books go into great detail. I'd like to give a quick shout out to the Stone Circle community. Sandbag Intensity just came out, and within a day, you guys made it an Amazon #1 bestseller in the most competitive fitness category, just like you did for Sandbag Hypertrophy last year. Thank you for that. As always, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.